Welcome to this episode of the Conscious Business Coffee Break, where we take a few moments to explore what's happening in the conscious business movement, expand awareness, and most importantly, encourage your efforts in conscious business. Greetings, everyone. I'm Stephen Donaco of the Conscious Business Enterprise, a division of humanities team. And today on the program, Optimism and the Future of Business. And this topic was inspired by an article in the Harvard Business Review called Why the Future Belongs to Tough-Minded Optimists. And it's written by Bill Taylor, who's the co-founder of Fast Company magazine. And he says, in tumultuous times like these, even for leaders committed to building a more prosperous future for their organizations, it's easy to surrender to pessimism. And then he goes on to say that, however, many companies and organizations have been led by what leadership scholar and civic reformer John Gardner called a quote-unquote tough-minded optimism. And this is a blend of original ideas, deep convictions, and resilience in the face of change. Now, Taylor goes on to write, as I think about the leaders I've studied, those who are winning big in tough and demanding fields, what strikes me is that they've developed compelling answers to four questions that get to the heart of what lifts their spirits and heightens their performance, what rallies others to help them to succeed. So I'm going to present you with those four answers with some additional insight from a conscious business perspective. So one, do you have a definition of success for your business that allows you to stand for something special and that inspires others to stand with you? He says the most successful companies don't just sell competitive products and services, they stand for important ideas that shape the future direction of their fields, ideas that reshape the sense of what's possible for customers, colleagues, and investors. The most exciting companies I know don't want to be the best at what lots of companies already do. They want to be the only ones who do what they do. That sense of originality represents an alluring alternative to a dreary status quo. So to me, this gets to the heart of the question of why are we in business? So one, if it's just to make money, you really won't care what you do. Whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're someone who just needs a job, right? And a lot of us have been maybe in a situation where we just need to make money, we just need a job to pay the bills, and we will take one of the first offers we get to do that, and we're not really invested in what the company does or why it does it. We're doing it for the money. And however, if our definition of success for our business is to make an impact, that changes, it shifts. That we'll do what inspires us, even what we're called to do. So even if we can't explain why it is that we do, because we simply feel drawn to it, we're going to do it because it has deeper meaning for us. So again, if the definition for success in business is just to make money, you won't care what kind of company it is. You won't care, probably you won't care what kind of damage it might do to the environment or to society. Is simply just making money. And this is where you might hear the saying that don't take it personal, it's just business. But if we shift that, and if your definition for success in business is to make an impact positively in the world and in your communities and for yourself, you're going to be drawn to do what inspires you and even what you're called to do. Number two then is, do you and your colleagues work as distinctively as you compete? The most successful leaders in organizations think differently from everyone else, but they also care more than everyone else. They care about customers, about colleagues, about the whole organization and how it conducts itself in a world with so many opportunities to cut corners and compromise on values. It's good to be efficient and personal. It's essential to be memorable and meaningful. This emotional connection between organizations and their people, between brands and their customers, creates positive energy, even in negative environments. So this is dovetails off of that first question, and where I talked about meaning in work and why it is that we are in business or that we're working for a company. And this reminds me further of a friend of mine who says when he's considering working for a new organization, he starts by asking the leader two questions. And this is his whole basis for making a decision about whether he wants to pursue working for that company. And his first question is, well, why do people buy from you? And the second question is, why do people want to work for you? And that second question in particular will shed light on people's intentions and inspiration. So again, if people want to work for you just simply to make money, that's going to be a lot different from the answer to the question being that people want to work for us because they align with our mission. They feel that by working for us, they are contributing to something greater than themselves. It speaks to meaning. And I'm always reminded when I see things like this that Gallup, and I think it's good for us to continue to remind ourselves that Gallup has done 30 years of research that says nearly 80% of people worldwide are not engaged. They don't have an emotional or psychological connection to the work they do. So we have a long way to go, and let's continue to encourage people to find meaning in work and to build businesses that inspire people to want to work for them. Number 3, are you as consistent as you are creative? Being optimistic is not the same as being totally open to change. In fact, one reason people get pessimistic about the future is that organizations they are part of can't stop changing. Too many companies lurch from one consulting firm to the next, from last year's hot management fad to this year's new business model. Management guru Jim Collins puts it this way, quote, "The signature of mediocrity is not an unwillingness to change. The signature of mediocrity is chronic inconsistency," unquote. If you want to be a tough-minded optimist, then your priorities have to stay consistent in good times and bad. And to me, from a conscious business perspective, this speaks to maturity. That the more mature the company's leaders are, the less likely they are to chase these fads and look at the next shiny object and be attracted to it. It speaks to focus, and it speaks to discipline. And this is the idea of not pursuing change for the sake of change, but pursuing change in a meaningful way and being thoughtful about it. Otherwise, you're just scatterbrained. And we see a lot of businesses doing this and a lot of leaders doing this, chasing the next fad. And it's probably why we have so many different business books out there. And we see certain buzzwords in business being cropping up like every year. And then those become part of the lexicon for that year until the next fad comes up. So this speaks also to that having a faith or a trust in what you're doing as being meaningful in your business, and to have faith that that will continue to work out as your focus and your discipline continue. And this isn't to say putting the blinders on and not being willing to innovate or staying stuck to supporting some product that might be obsolete. So for instance, we take the classic example of the buggy whip manufacturer, right? We don't have, we're driving around in cars and not so much in buggies anymore. So if you're stuck on being focused on building a buggy whip company, you're not going to get very far these days. But if you're doing something truly innovative and you're staying focused and disciplined to that, and you're paying attention to some greater call and some greater purpose for your business as it relates to providing products and services that truly serve the world, then you can have faith that those intentions, and you can have trust that those intentions are going to be leading you to an even greater and better place that helps you to realize business success. And all of this applies equally to life. Maturity, focus, discipline, not changing for the sake of change, but having a faith and the trust that being your authentic self is going to cause you to evolve and to flourish. And then the last question, number 4, or the last answer rather, number 4, have you figured out how your company's history can help to shape its future? Psychologist Jerome Bruner put his finger on what can happen when the best of the old informs the search for the new. The essence of creativity, he argues, is, quote, figuring out how to use what you already know in order to go beyond what you already think, unquote. That's why the most optimistic leaders don't disavow what's come before. Instead, they reinterpret what's come before as a way to develop a line of sight into what comes next. Sometimes the very act of rediscovering the past creates the confidence necessary to craft a game plan for the future. And this speaks to the idea and the practice to include and transcend. So in integral theory, Ken Wilber talks about this, that as we evolve, we don't throw out what's come before, but we include the best of what's become before. We include what's worked, and then we take that and we evolve with it, and that becomes a basis for evolving, and then we transcend and we get to the next iteration. And the really simple example of this is just the automobile, and it started all with the wheel. Right? So we've had wheels on carts and buggies, and then once the combustion engine was created, those buggies were outfitted with motors so that the vehicle could move through motorized power, but they still sat on wheels, right? So, and then we get to further iterations of the automobile that have improved vastly in performance from the beginning. And no matter what iteration of the automobile that we have had, including hybrids and now electric vehicles, they all sit on wheels. So it's taking that idea, that invention, the wheel, and continuing to include it on the automobile as that invention continues to evolve with time. So we wouldn't replace the wheel with something different that didn't roll, right? We don't replace the wheel with blocks, and maybe perhaps someday we'll have hover vehicles, but that's a whole different kind of vehicle then. As long as automobiles are going to be on roads, the wheel will continue to be included no matter what the engine type is. God.